Good afternoon. I am Tamika Harris, the Director of Communication and Community Relations for the Urban Redevelopment Authority. We welcome you to our regular board meeting. Today is October 13th, 2022. Chairman Chintalapoli, I send it over to you. It looks like we have quorum, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you, Director. Yeah, I see Councilman Lavelle and Director Powell on. I don't see Director Williamson and Representative Morato yet, but we do have quorum. So with that, we can call the meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is approval of the September 8th, 2022 regular URA Board meeting minutes. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay. We'll give the motion to Director Powell and the second to Councilman Lavelle. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Please note that the board met in executive session to discuss personnel matters on October 7th. During that session, as well as one on September 30th, the board was also briefed by staff regarding today's agenda. The briefing was for informational purposes only. With that, we'll move into public comment. I know we have a number of registered speakers today. Director Harris, I think the first one is John Conturo. No.
That is correct, Chairman. I'm locating John in the meeting room right now. And John, while I'm looking for you, you'll have approximately 3 minutes for your comments, and I'll let you know when you have about 30 seconds left. Okay, let's talk. Okay, John, you have the floor and your time begins now.
I have one request before my time starts. Is there any possibility to show the video feed of our shop?
It is not, unfortunately.
Oh, man. Okay. Great. Well, I can say my comment then, if you'd like to begin. Thanks for having me, everyone. So yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Conturo, and I am the president and founder of Conturo Prototyping. I am 30 years old and grew up in the East End of Pittsburgh and have continued to live here my entire life. I am a product of Pittsburgh Public Schools and the University of Pittsburgh. I started my business when I was 24 years old with little financial assistance and no outside investment. Our growth is a result of the determination and hard work of our amazing workforce. Our company currently employs 32 incredible people, primarily residing within biking distance to our currently leased space. Some even live in Homewood and have been there their entire life. Our company produces state-of-the-art machine components for the amazing technology companies that we have welcomed into our city. Our parts are in self-driving cars, cutting-edge robots, and even spacecraft headed to the moon. Over the better part of the last decade, we have been searching for a permanent building to call home and make big investments in far into the future. After searching far and wide, we came across the abandoned Coliseum in Homewood. The building has a solid floor on grade that used to support trolley cars and boasts a roof that spans the entire length of the building without a single column. It has parking for 30 cars, which aligns perfectly with the use we were proposing. Our vision was to turn the structure into a new state-of-the-art headquarters for operation. Our plan also included a dedicated space for workforce development and vocational training with the assistance of the University of Pittsburgh. Lastly, we understood the sentimental value the building has, so we decided to dedicate the most visible portion of the building to the community for recreational use or affordable storefront space. After 3 years of hard work and tens of thousands of dollars of expense, we presented a plan that was deemed financially viable and appeared to be a win-win-win for everyone. To our shock and surprise, the project was not presented to the URA Board. We were told the process would start over again and be limited to recreational use. Unfortunately, our business needs to move forward, and we desperately need to find a suitable site to permanently reside. After years of searching, a relocation out of the city seems more and more imminent. At no point did any of the organizations accountable for this type of assistance provide us with any support in finding a viable site. All that I ask is that everyone here clearly understands the implications of this decision. This decision implies that Pittsburgh no longer values our business nor our workforce. This decision implies that Pittsburgh, the Steel City, no longer values the power that manufacturing has to lift generations of hardworking people into prosperity regardless of race, sex, or age. This decision implies that Pittsburgh does not value the needs of an underserved community, merely their desires. This decision implies one more missed opportunity and a future of stagnation for a community that needs investment more than any. This decision implies that Pittsburgh does not value the success of a local, young, driven entrepreneur that has provided countless opportunities to people who needed them. Most importantly, this decision implies that Pittsburgh values fantasy over reality.
John, any more comments? You have about 20 seconds.
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to the next speaker, would any members of the board like to respond? Okay, hearing none, our next public commenter is Sam Gibson. Doesn't appear that Sam has joined the meeting yet, so we'll move on to Paul O'Hanlon. Paul, you now have the floor and your time starts now.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul O'Hanlon. I've been a proponent of the Section 8 home ownership program for over 20 years and vocally critical of the pathetic effort of the Housing Authority of the City of Pittsburgh to promote and utilize this program. So let me start with some numbers. While HACP has reported either 3 or 4 home ownership closings per year, Allegheny County has done 10 times those numbers. Philadelphia has done 100 times those numbers. Philadelphia is obviously a much bigger city. I like to compare us to Louisville, Kentucky, another mid-sized Appalachian city, and they have 50 times our numbers. Thus, my assessment that HACP's efforts are pathetic. I'm really glad to see this collaboration with HACP. I think the emphasis on stewardship and tasking the City of Bridges to support participants to succeed is great to see. Frankly, I think the policy of price capping resales is wrong-headed and will be a bureaucratic nightmare. But I see significant problem from the HACP side of things. According to their video, a participating family must have a minimum gross income equal to or greater than 50% of area median income. I must point out that Section 8 eligibility ends at 50% of median. Their home ownership program, which uses funds from the Section 8 program, excludes everyone on or eligible for Section 8, except for people with disabilities and seniors. There are families of HACP's public housing communities who have incomes between 50 and 80% of median, and they would be eligible. But these guidelines create an extremely small group of potentially eligible participants, and by design exclude families with the greatest need. I think this deserves your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hanlon. Our next public commenter is Rico Rucker.
Hello, everyone. How are you guys?
Good.
My question is, due to the fact that the Greater Pittsburgh Coliseum process was efficient for the RFI requirement, what is the possibility for us when it does resurface to move forward with an RFP?
I defer to staff to if they want to get more technical, Mr. Rucker. I mean, we'll address the decision related to the Coliseum in a little more fulsome manner later in the agenda. But in terms of the exact way we'll proceed in the process, that's some work that staff's going to regroup and do some thinking around so that we can ensure that we're allowing for the most inclusive kind of way for the process to proceed going forward. So I don't know that there's a direct answer in terms of the form that'll take necessarily yet, but that's kind of the high level position at the moment.
Okay, and for the timeline, what is the timeline that you guys have in place of when the new process will actually start for entertainment developers?
I'd defer to staff if there's been any further thinking on this, but I think that's part of the process of regrouping, Mr. Rucker. We don't have that necessarily, but once that is pinned down and there's clarity on the best way to proceed, staff's planning to come back to the board and we will communicate all of that publicly. But
Okay.
no one's looking to take more time than is needed, but we do need to obviously take the time to be thoughtful on this.
Okay, so just an update. I had a meeting with John Couture. With that being said, we were interested in seeing how we could collaborate together in regards to the Greater Pittsburgh Coliseum to be able to make both entities work together for the greater of the community. If that was an option that we decided to take, is there a possibility that we can meet and kind of move this ball a little bit sooner?
I can't answer that. It's great to hear first that you all have, open conversations and are looking to collaborate. But yeah, in terms of, what the process looks like yet again, that's some of the work that folks are going to do, when they have a chance to regroup on all this.
So when you say folks, which folks are you speaking in regards of, so I can actually reach out to them to try to figure out if that is a way to move forward?
Yeah, it would be staff. I'd defer to Director Flissrum or Deputy Director Namani Stanger if there's specific people. If not, I know staff's been in contact, with all of the respondents already, and can follow up with you separately as well.
Okay, is it possible if you can put their emails in the chat so I can actually reach out to them in regards to this?
Rico, I'll send you mine, and Sushila will send you posters as well. Either one of us can serve as your contact on this.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. That concludes what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rucker. Our next registered public commenter is Terry Minor Spencer. Terry, you now have the floor, and your 3 minutes for public comment begins now.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Yes, I was born in Esplin, raised in Broadhead Manor, AKA Fairwood. My questions and my comments are, why can't the community be true partners in this development that is going on, this project that is going on in Fairwood? And why can we not be partners like the Allendale Circle Co-op, the co-op that they have? Why can we not be partners in that as well? And what happens after the 16 years? What guarantees do the community have that it will remain affordable? And also my last question is, does anyone, URA or anyone, believe that the Pittsburgh's affordable housing crisis is just temporary? That's all I have.
I'll take the last one first, and then if staff can speak to some of the particulars of the deal and the financing, because I'm not familiar. But Ms. Minor Spencer, I don't think any of us believe that the need for affordable housing is temporary. Just to answer that plainly and directly, it's the reason for the commitment to the Housing Opportunity Fund, and why we're actively working to secure additional funding. As well as the way in which we deploy the Rescue Plan, American Rescue Plan Act monies that we're looking to do. Mr. O'Hanlon's comments notwithstanding on opportunities to improve, and as we learn more about the Ompgh program, that's a prime example of another way that we're hoping to address it, in addition to increased rental units and other ways to support existing homeowners in their homes as well. So,
thank you, Kyle.
Hi, Terry. let me just put on my video as well. I'm Nicholas Person. I'm the project manager at the URA for the Fairwood Cedarwood Homes project.
Mhm.
And from my knowledge, working with the developer Trico Partners, when the school was demolished and in the late 2010s, when the URA first issued a request for proposal for the redevelopment of the site into producing affordable housing, there was a concerted effort by Trico Partners to work with multiple different representatives of the site, including Councilwoman Teresa Kyle Smith. There were efforts as well in collaboration with Teresa as well as the URA in trying to get community input by creating advertisements for the proposal that Trico Partners have, and also distributing surveys, I believe, at the time of Trico Partners' proposal, along with a few other proposals for the site. And at that time, they had received the most popularity for their design, for their suggested redevelopment. I think there were efforts. I think there were efforts as well trying to be made to receive more community input. But I think when these surveys were distributed back in 2021, there was also difficulty because of COVID-19 and the enforcements in place about limiting the amount of in-person communication. And in terms of the second thing that you brought up about affordability over a long-term period, I can say that one of the riders or one of the requirements as part of the RGP loan that is being provided to the developers for Cedarwood Homes is that the units themselves maintain affordability over a 40-year period.
Over a what period? I'm sorry.
40-year period.
And then after go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that was it.
Oh, okay. And so that was one of my questions. So after because I had 16 years, that was what I read, but you're saying it was 40. So after the 40 years, do you have any idea what would happen then? And when the gentleman came from Trico to the community to tell us what he was going to do, the respect that he had was when asked, can we at least see a picture, a prototype, anything? He had nothing. So, which was extremely disrespectful, as I would say. But thank you very much for your answers.
No problem, Terry. If you would like as well, I have copies as well of final drawings for those for the development of Cedarwood Homes. If it would at all be useful for you to also, for you and the rest of the community to take a look at those as well.
We'll greatly appreciate that. And I'm sure the rest of the community will as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Minor Spencer, I have your email address so I can get you and Nick in touch.
Thank you, Daniel.
And I will do that in just a moment after I introduce our next public commenter, who is Patricia Hare Johnson. Patricia, you have the floor for 3 minutes and your time starts now. Or after you get yourself unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay, I want to paint a picture. I worked in the Fairwood community for several years. I was on executive committees of every organization in that community. That community, to me, has been a victim of genocide. When I went to a meeting April 7th, the contract, I'm the one that asked the question to the contractor, can we see a prototype? He had none. It was just disrespectful. I felt very disrespected when they're proposing, they're telling us what they're going to do, but they couldn't show us. They're going to tell us things. We didn't have any input. We weren't asked any input. We didn't have any input. That whole neighborhood, starting from Broadhead Manor, the Ompgh Mall, the commercial center, and the school, have all been destroyed. We were told at that meeting that that's a flood zone. I did research. I have a map, and it is area A1 It looks like EL. The incidence of flood is 0.01%. That is not a flood zone. UPS and OK Grocery was not flooded. So if it was a flood zone, they wouldn't want to build down in that particular area. It is not a flood zone. We were told, we were misled, we were misinformed, we were really, it was terrible to be told what they're going to do without community input. I'm opposed to anything that the community doesn't have partnership with. We deserve that as City of Pittsburgh residents. The Fairwood people were not informed to a lot of these meetings. The only reason why I found out is somebody was going and asked me, was I going? I said, what do you mean? So the communication was not given. End of story. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate you listening and I can have input. That's it. Oh, I was told also that FEMA declared that a flood zone. And I asked the people who were forced out of their homes, did they ever meet with FEMA? FEMA didn't meet with these people. That didn't happen. I'm very disappointed.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Staff, do you have anybody like to respond to her concerns?
Daniel, I'd like to ask a clarifying question of Ms. Johnson. When you're referencing the site in question, Ms. Johnson, is that the former public housing site, the Broadhead Manor, or the school site?
I'm talking about the entire area, the school, the community center, which was named the Ujima, and Broadhead Manor, as well as the commercial plaza. That's all part of Fairwood. All of it is destroyed. Now, there was a road we used to call the New Road. Now it's called the Industrial Highway. It's been heightened, refurbished, painted, and everything else. But the neighborhood, the community has not. So it's telling me that there's something bigger going on. I don't know what it is, but it happened. There used to be a community called Ingram Palace. That's gone. Everything out there has been destroyed. And I just felt that we were being ignored when the contractor didn't even have enough respect to have a prototype for us to look at.
My name is Evan Miller with the housing department here at the URA. We can, when Nicholas, we do have updated drawings and renderings of this project, so we can be sure that you are in receipt of those as well after this meeting.
Why did Teresa Kell Smith call a meeting and have the contractor with no prototypes to show the people who actually live there?
I was not, the staff involved at this point in the life cycle of the project were not involved with it at that point, so I can't speak to what happened at that meeting, but your frustrations are heard, and there will be a development representative later on in the meeting when we take the item for vote, so they could possibly speak to that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Johnson. I'm going to go back to Sam Gibson. Sam, if you are in the room under a different display name, could you please shoot us a message in the Q&A so that we can allow you to speak? If not, Chairman Shinslopoli has one other item of public comment to read onto the record.
Thanks, Daniel. If Mr. Gibson hasn't identified himself, but we see him later in the meeting, just let us know. The last item on public comment was a support letter from the Pittsburgh Regional Alliance in favor of the Pittsburgh Downtown Conversion Program guidelines, which are up for final consideration on the agenda later today. With that, we'll move into announcements. The first is the outdoor dining grant awardees. Miranda Nasiri and Josette Fitzgibbons are joining us for that.
Good afternoon, board and public. My name is Miranda Messier. I am the Neighborhood Business District Outreach Analyst in the Business Solutions Department. I'm presenting to you today the Outdoor Dining Program Grant Awardees. This program provides grant funding for outdoor infrastructure to allow restaurant activity to occur safely outdoors and really to prevent or mitigate the spread of COVID-19. The grants will be awarded to eligible business supporting nonprofit organizations, community development corporations, business improvement districts, and chambers of commerce. You'll see on the right there that the awardees that we have preliminarily approved are as follows: Northside Leadership Conference, $90,000, Oakland Business Improvement District, $90,000, Innovate Pittsburgh, $60,000, Mount Washington CDC, $30,000, Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership, $90,000, Lawrenceville Corporation, $90,000, the Greenwood Plan, $30,000, Bloomfield Garfield Corporation, $30,000, and Bloomfield Development Corporation, $30,000. If you have any questions or comments, I'm available. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Miranda. Any questions or comments for the board? Well, certainly as we go into the fall, and hopefully the numbers still stay down, but in the event they go up, having more outdoor dining options, in these business districts in support of the small businesses, along these corridors will be critically important. So it's exciting to see this moving forward. I know it's something that staff's been working on a long time. So thank you for the work that you've done, Josette and the whole team. It's great to see it come to fruition.
Thank you.
Next, we have the request for public comment on the HOF 2023 draft allocation plan. John Burns and Evan Miller are joining us for that.
Yeah, so my name is Jad Burns. I am the Housing Administrator and Community Outreach Coordinator at the URA. And we, at the Housing Opportunity Fund Advisory Board meeting, we approved a draft plan for the annual allocation for 2023 next year. And this provides, the information that we did per AMI level for each of the different programs for the board of directors here. Basically, one of the biggest changes from previous years is that there are some demonstration dollar monies going into this next allocation plan in comparison to last year where we didn't have any. Some of that was for capacity building and for putting money into different projects that might come up. So just wanted to make a note of that. But this is open for public comment until October 31st at 4 p.m. So if anybody is interested in making public comment on this allocation plan, they can feel free to do so at on our website at ura.org/pages/HOF, and you have the ability to input any feedback you have. Thank you.
Thanks, Jed. Any questions or comments for the board on this one? Great. It's exciting to see another allocation plan kind of come into fruition. I know you all do meetings, across the city for this and seek a lot of input. So thanks for pulling it together. Hopefully we'll get some more good input, as this moves along. And then, when this comes back for final adoption. So thank you and the entire team for your work on that. Our next announcement is related to the Greater Pittsburgh Coliseum, which I know there was a lot of interest on and discussion about. I want to sort of address this, more in a more fulsome manner to the conversation earlier, but in July 2021, the URA issued a request for information in search of project concepts for the redevelopment of the Greater Pittsburgh Coliseum, the building and facilities known locally as the Homewood Coliseum. We received a total of 9 responses, and over the past year, staff have worked diligently with the review committee to narrow down these responses and continue gathering feedback about the potential concepts through community engagement opportunities like meetings and a public survey. We've learned a lot through this process. We heard the residents' clear desire and priority for any potential end use for the Coliseum to include a community serving space for all ages, and for this space to live on as a safe gathering place for youth and families. Ideally, such a project could also create jobs and economic opportunities for Homewood residents in the process. The URA fully supports these objectives. We want the community to win. Part of ensuring community benefits, though, that are promised in a proposal become a reality for Homewood residents includes our responsibility to evaluate a proposal's financial feasibility. We acknowledge that the URA's history has not always been favorable to underserved communities and is certainly riddled by numerous mistakes. However, it is critical to emphasize this is not a repeat of those previous wrongs. While the intention behind the RFI was to put Homewood and the preservation of the community asset at the forefront of the project, we now realize that the RFI process alone was an insufficient vehicle for developing a proposal that would ensure the Coliseum's sustainability and longevity. After carefully considering all written and financial documents provided to us by the 9 respondents, we have decided not to advance any of the proposals received through this process. We officially notified the final 3 respondents of this decision on October 4th, 2022. At this point, as I said earlier, staff would like to regroup and continue to work with the Gainey administration in order to determine a better path for finding an end use, which could allow for a facility that serves what they clearly heard the community wants to see and experience at the Coliseum. We expect them to return to the board once reaching an agreement on how best to proceed. Thank you. And then the last announcement for the day is on the Lower Hill redevelopment. Julia McMahon, I believe, is joining us for this one.
Hello, my name is Julia McMahon, and I am a project manager in the Project and Asset Management Division. I'm here today to notify the board and the public of a possible briefing of the Lower Hill Lockheed project at the November 10th URA board meeting. This will be a briefing and is contingent upon the URA's receipt of all required information from the developer. If the board is briefed on the Lower Hill Lockheed project in November, a final vote may occur in December. The period between the board meetings will allow for public comments to be made and considered. Information on how to provide comments on this matter are included on the slide. Again, if this project is presented in November, it'll be a briefing and not a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. With that, we can move into our regular agenda. So the first item on the agenda is the final Ompgh guidelines. Derek Kendall-Morris and Evan Miller will be joining us for that.
Thank you, Kyle. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Derek Kendall-Morris. I'm the manager of consumer lending within the residential and consumer lending department at the URA. Presenting to you today the final program guidelines for the Ompgh program. As was discussed at the September meeting, the Ompgh program goal is to increase access to home ownership across the city of Pittsburgh for potential home buyers at or below 80% of the area median income. And that we will do that through a collaboration between the URA and the Housing Authority of the City of Pittsburgh to provide up to $90,000 of financial assistance to lower the cost of the home that the borrower is purchasing. Based on community feedback that we've received over the last month, we have adjusted the guidelines to allow for some greater flexibility in terms of who would be eligible to receive some assistance through the UMPGH program. So we have adjusted those guidelines to state that back-end debt-to-income ratios, if someone would be receiving the full $90,000, that back-end ratio would need to be at 35% or below. But if the applicant has a back-end debt-to-income ratio of 35% or above, but not above 43%, then that borrower would still be eligible for the $50,000 grant from the URA, but not the matching second deferred loan funding from the Housing Authority. So we're hopeful that this change will, again, open the program up to a larger pool of applicants and achieve our goal of really increasing access to that homeownership opportunity across the city. So open it up to any questions or comments that the board may have, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Derek. Before the other board members weigh in, just for the public's benefit, I know you spell it out as debt to income, but can you just explain the back end ratio for the public so that folks, watching now or later understand what that means and why sort of that tweak will indeed open up to a broader pool of applicants?
Absolutely, yeah. So the back end debt to income ratio is a calculation that is done to determine, whether that applicant can afford to, make the mortgage and loan payments that they would be taking on by purchasing this home, in addition to the, credit card payments, car payments, and other payments that household makes on a monthly basis. It's a way for us to ensure that those home buyers are going to be able to be successful homeowners and are going to be able to manage all of the responsibilities that come along with that, and that we're not setting up these home buyers to fail. That's really the goal. And so the Housing Authority has a 35% back end ratio that they utilize. And we've expanded that for at least the URA funds to 43 or below, since that matches current guidelines from the Department of Housing and Urban Development at the federal level.
Thanks, Derek. Any questions or comments from the board? I know we saw the draft last month, but.
No question. Excuse me, no questions. I just want to thank staff for working on this. This has been sort of a long conversation that we've been having in terms of how to put this together. And so I want to thank Cal, you for your leadership. And I just want to thank all of staff who's been working on this.
Agreed, Councilman. It's exciting to see this moving ahead. I think it'll be a great tool, especially the weird things happen in the housing market right now. Having more tools available for folks to access home ownership, is a great thing to see. So, yeah, Derek, Evan, the whole team that's worked on this, I'm sure the list is long. Thank you for what you've done, and also I want to thank the board too, as it relates to the guidelines and ensuring that we were posting the draft ones ahead of time. So that the public had an opportunity to weigh in. I think, the change to the ratio that Derek kindly walked us all through is an example of, one of the changes that we made on the time from when the draft guidelines were posted to now what's before us today for adoption. So just a great example and really firsthand as to why that process is important and how we were able to make this program even better than we had originally thought it'd be. Director Williamson?
Yeah, I completely agree. Just want to echo your comments and Councilman Lovell's comments. And again, thank the staff and everybody who had a hand in this. It's been a long time in coming. I'm curious if we have a sense of how many, with the available initial funding, how many homeowners or first-time homeowners were going to be able to help with this program?
I think to some extent, it's going to depend on the timing of the funds, and that's going to be sorted out over the next couple of months as we get a recipient agreement hashed out with the city. I think right now in the first year, we're hoping to do at least 50, but potentially more. But again, there's a number of factors like the rising interest rates that we see right now, how much money we'll have on hand to do this. But we are hoping to start moving people at a pretty decent clip here.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it would seem like just based on the amount of money, we could be looking at literally hundreds of, at least 100, 1 or 200 at a minimum first-time home buyers if this helps out.
I also do just want to make a quick note for the board and the public. Getting these final guidelines approved is a step in the process to getting the recipient agreement that I did mention. And once we have that, we'll really be ready for program rollout. So we will come back to the board with just a general announcement when this is truly launched and ready for a rollout. So we'll be working with internally the URA communications department, as well as getting the word out externally.
Thanks, Evan. Obviously the community groups will be tremendous partners in this. Council offices, the mayor's, neighborhood services team as well, just to make sure that people are hearing about it at their neighborhood meetings too. So it's great. Any other questions or comments?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. The motion carries. Thank you both again.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Fairwood, Cedarwood Homes. Joining us for this will be Nicholas Person and Evan Noel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Afternoon, everyone. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Nicholas Person. I'm a lending analyst working in the residential lending department of the URA. And I'm here in front of the board today to request authorization to execute a deed for the sale of the following listed lots to Cedarwood Homes Holdings LLC for $434,900 plus costs. These 5 URA-owned parcels are located in the Fairwood neighborhood in Pittsburgh's West End at the site where the former Fairwood School was demolished. And in response to this vacant and underutilized land, in December of 2019, the URA first issued a request for proposal for these parcels to be utilized for the development of affordable housing. The developer, as mentioned earlier, Trico Partners, approached the URA with a proposal to purchase the parcels of land and utilize 9% low-income housing tax credits to construct new affordable housing for the city's senior residents. The proposed development, which will be known as Cedarwood Homes, consists of 46 new units along Broadhead Fording Road, contained within 12 single-story quads with individual ground floors and 1 community center duplex. 39 of the 46 units will be income restricted, with 5 set aside for tenants with incomes at or below 20% AMI, 19 units at or below 50% AMI, and 15 units at or below 60% AMI. Minding the needs of some of its residents, the architects have also made sure in their design that all common spaces will be fully accessible and all apartment units will meet PHFA visitability requirements. 6 apartments will also be fully accessible per ADA guidelines, and 7 units will be equipped for the hearing and vision impaired. In May of this year, the developer's proposal for the land was approved by the URA Board and were authorized to enter into a disposition contract. At that same meeting, the board also approved a $1.41 million rental gap program loan serving as gap financing for the development of Cedarwood Homes. Trico Partners have since submitted their final drawings, as well as all evidence of financing for the project, including commitment letters from PHFA, the Housing Authority of the City of Pittsburgh, as well as their equity investor Merchants Capital. Total development costs are estimated to be at roughly $20.3 million. Furthermore, they have gone through all necessary city and zoning approvals, including the consolidation of 4 of the parcels into one, which will be referred to as Block 70E Lot 185, and they've submitted MWBE and MWI narratives that have been reviewed and approved by the URA's compliance team. With the disposition contract prepared and ready to be signed by both parties, I have come here to the board first to request authorization to execute the deed. But before the board makes their decision, I would like to introduce Isaac Sassoon, Senior Vice President of TRICO, to provide a few brief remarks regarding Cedarwood Homes, including perhaps answering some of the concerns raised by both Terry and Patricia earlier. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Isaac Sassoon with TRICO Partners. I want to thank the board and the chairman for all of their hard work to get us to this point. As mentioned by Nicholas, this has been a lengthy process that began almost 3 years ago. It was a process that was a competitive one where two other groups also competed to provide a proposal for affordable housing at this project. We are very excited with the progress that we've made so far. As Nicholas mentioned, we've obtained all approvals on the zoning side and the PHFA side. This disposition is the final hurdle for us to complete and hopefully put a shovel in the ground in the next approximately 60 days so that we can help develop the next and I think very important project here for affordable housing, which would represent the first affordable housing in the West End in several decades. It is definitely a much needed project. And as we mentioned, and as Nicholas mentioned, 39 of the 46 units are going to be income restricted for affordable housing with people with certain incomes at 20%, 50%, and 60% of area median income. We are quite excited with the progress. We do want to thank the URA with what progress has occurred so far. I do want to apologize. It was mentioned by a couple of folks that were providing comments earlier that the plans were not provided at a previous meeting about 3 or 4 months ago. The only thing that I could think of in terms of why plans weren't shown at that meeting would have been that the plans weren't final. I'm surprised that they didn't provide the preliminary plans, but they are garden style, they are ground level units, and they are fairly large, about 700 square feet is each unit. If there are any other questions, I can try and address those. And again, thank you everyone for the progress that we've made so far.
Thank you, Mr. Sassoon. Any questions or comments from the board? I don't know, Mr. Sassoon, if you're the right person to address this too, but the questions that were posed earlier as it relates to the floodplain, and some of those ratings, obviously, that can have some restrictions on residential development. Since you're through entitlements, I'm sure that's come up. So if there's anything you're able to share for the benefit of the public and the folks who spoke earlier as it relates to the questions and concerns on that, that would be helpful.
Sure. We did go through all the entitlements, as you mentioned. A floodplain was not raised for this development as being an issue whatsoever. So I was surprised, and I think you tried to clarify also whether or not the question was related to a different property or different parcel, but this development would not be subject to any restrictions on building related to a flood zone.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick thing. I know we've talked about it in other meetings, but I think it's really important as we're continuing to build more homes that meet the needs of various residents and various Pittsburghers. Could you talk through the visibility requirements and how important that is for some of our older residents?
Absolutely. We, as mentioned by Nicholas, we did design a number of these units with visibility in mind. They are all ground floor units. We obviously anticipate that the people that are going to be living here, given that it's a senior community, are going to have certain issues in terms of visitability with people that come to visit their units as the development is rented out and people move in. That is something that was addressed in the design. There are, I think, at least 7 units that have full visitability, and they are all ground floor units that should enable visitability to be much, much easier.
Sorry, I just want to clarify that it's the 7 units will be designated or allocated for those with hearing that are have hearing or vision that is impaired, but all units will meet the PHFA visitability requirements. And actually, I distinctly remember Lindsay Powell asking questions about this back in August about the visitability. And upon my review as well, I was able to find as well that there are 3 basic requirements. There are more too. These are the 3 basic ones that designate a unit as a visitability unit. And those include a 10-step entrance, doors with 32 inches of clear passage space, and 1 bathroom on the main floor you can get into in a wheelchair. And the idea here is that, similar to ADA requirements, this is PHFA's own version of making these units accessible for those who either want to visit the units or also for those needing to live in them.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Kyle, I think the floodplain issue, I'm not certain about this, but I think that more impacts the industrial site, the Fairwood industrial site, which is closer to the run there, the creek. And I know there's a lot of site work, a lot of grading that's going to happen, fill activity, and I believe also that building's going to be built on raised foundations to deal with the potential flood risk down there. So this site is not going to leave the Fairwood industrial site, which is again to the southwest of this is the impacted site.
Great. Thanks, Director. Mr. Sassoon, Mr. O'Hanlon in the chat, I guess this is actually against the interests of my employer at the city, but I'm going to let you know in any way that there are $2,500 city and county tax credits that are available for each visitable unit. So something to keep in mind as you and your team are moving through the process here to help, because we all understand and know that the margins on affordable deals are thin. So if that can help, just keep up the community and whatnot, something to be mindful of.
That would be tremendously helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. O'Hanlon. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. Well, thank you, Nicholas, Evan, the whole team, Mr. Sassoon, you and Trico Partners. I know this is a project that Council President Cale Smith is excited to see move forward. And we're obviously, as Director Flistrom just noted, have investments across the way, and are looking at ways to unlock tools to support some of the existing residents that are nearby there too. So it's exciting to see sort of level of investment, and certainly, we'll follow up with the folks who asked to understand the project a little bit more to get them the details that they requested, as Evan and Nicholas offered. So thank you all for that. With that, and entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, in the Central Business District, the Robertson Skinny Building, Donita Thomas and Lily Friedman are joining us for this.
Good afternoon, members of the board and community. My name is Donita Thomas. I'm a project manager for the Project and Asset Management Business Unit here at the URA. Apologies in advance for any coughing. I'm dealing with a little bit of a cold. Next for your consideration is the Skinny Roberts building proposal. Today, we request authorization to accept final evidence of financing, final drawings, and authorization to execute a deed with PNC for the sale of Skinny Roberts buildings located in Pittsburgh Central Business District for $1,300,000 plus cost. Next slide, please. In 2013, the URA acquired the properties to save the buildings from demolition and spur growth in the downtown area. An RCAP grant provided the buildings with a much needed facelift in 2014. And as previously heard by the board, PNC has devised a development plan to activate the space as well as preserve the building's character. The URA board previously approved proposal acceptance and entering into a disposition contract in September of 2021. Total development costs for the project are $10,480,000, and the development will feature upper floors that may be used for flexible office and conferencing amenity space for PNC employees, as well as to house an organization that would speak to diversity within PNC and the community. Lower floors of the Skinny building will be incubator space that will house entrepreneurs and local businesses. PNC has executed a memorandum of understanding with the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership to organize a rotating art display in the bay windows overlooking Forbes Avenue. The art program will feature works of local Pittsburgh artists and students and rotate at least annually. Pittsburgh History and Landmarks Foundation and the URA staff have reviewed and approved the architectural design via an executed design concurrence memo signed in June of 2022. PNC has also executed a 99-year preservation agreement with URA to protect the facades. PHLF's legal counsel reviewed and approved and provided comments on the deed restriction, which have been incorporated into the preservation agreement. The URA will retain air rights and transfer of development rights, which will prohibit any further build out without URA consent. Here with us representing the development are several members of the development team who will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Danita, and thanks for soldiering through a meeting. If you hope you're feeling better soon. I know I see Alyssa Sinacrope from PNC. I'm not sure if there's others from the team. If there's anything that Alyssa, you or anyone else on the PNC team would like to add. She's there.
How can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, no, we're just, we appreciate the partnership we've had with Danita and the team while we work to design over the last year, and we're excited to continue our commitment here to rejuvenating the block.
I had a question about the public art piece of this. Will the city's public art department be involved? And if so, is there a push to prioritize underrepresented artists or artists from non-traditional backgrounds within the public art push?
So I know DJ, are you on, DJ Bryant?
I am. I'm joined here with
DJ's
Teresa Pico as well. Can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay. So for the art program, the City of Pittsburgh Art Council is not involved with that. That is kind of curated by PNC itself.
Director Powell, when you mentioned that, were you thinking the public art team in city planning or the Office of Public Art?
No,
outside.
No, the public art team within city planning, yeah, I know this is a PNC project, but they have done a lot of work previously to do a kind of not a similar project to be able to display public art pieces from underrepresented artists in the downtown space and in buildings that or on top of buildings that the city or the URA owns. So collaboration there might be fruitful because they have a queue of artists, local artists that wanted to participate in the city program that may fit the mission and vision of what PNC has as well.
Yeah, and Lindsay, this is Alyssa again. I mean, we definitely are, working in coordination with Casey Droge, an art consultant. And she's certainly going to help us, to execute on that and work with, locals, student artists and underrepresented artists as well. So.
Yeah, Sarah Minart in the city would be a really great person to speak to as well, just because the city has done a similar program, have connections to artists who might want to participate in this one.
Originally, when we
go ahead, Danita, sorry.
Originally when the deal was made, there was a partnership with the city to put art in the space for 6 months while we got through the disposition process. But because of the pandemic and delays in getting art pieces manufactured, that kind of fell through. So there was a plan to involve the city originally early on, but unfortunately we weren't able to do that. But if Alyssa and her PNC, that art curator that they're using, could get back in touch with them, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thanks, Danita.
Alyssa, I can make that connection to Sarah Minart so that they're able to get looped in on this. It sounds like, yeah, to what Danita said, that there were earlier ones, so I'm sure she's familiar with it and can go from there. So.
Sure. Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments from the board members?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, the motion carries. Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you, DJ. Appreciate you sticking with this one, and Danita and the team for all the work that you've done to get it to this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Hazelwood Woods Village. Danita, I believe you're staying with us for this one, as well as Lily Friedman. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Next for your consideration is Woods Village, the proposed new construction of a mixed-use project in Pittsburgh's Hazelwood neighborhood. Today, we request authorization to further extend exclusive negotiations for a period of 90 days until January of 2023. The board previously approved entering into exclusive negotiations in September of 2021. Those were further extended in February of this year due to external factors that lengthened development timeline for Ompgh Consulting. The pre-development tasks requested by the URA in previous exclusive negotiations have been completed by the developer and reviewed by URA staff. However, staff recommended that further board action be held until the transfer of the publicly owned parcels has been approved by the city. This extension we are discussing today will provide extra time necessary to determine if the city is prepared to transfer the parcels necessary to complete the development. Total development costs for this development are $21.93 million. A change from last presentation is there's a reduction in the unit count from 62 to 57 residential units and a reduction of 4 retail units to allow for better stormwater management. Currently, 10% of housing square footage will be affordable at 80% of AMI. And there will also be an affordable commercial space available, excuse me. Environmental studies for the development have been completed and no fatal flaws were revealed. No recognized environmental concerns or contaminants were found, and site preparation recommendations were provided that will be followed during construction of the project. The developer will continue to engage with Partner for Work and the URA on the workforce development. The development will be funded by private debt, opportunity zone funds, and developer equity. The now clear parcels were previously occupied by row houses, but the land has stood vacant for the past 40 years and has since been overtaken by nature. The project has generated significant community interest, and Ompgh will continue to engage community members to workshop the concept and flesh out his proposal. A community meeting was recently held in September, and as suggested by the community and this board, Ompgh will continue to explore both an increase to affordable housing units and further define the job training program. These items are contingent on financing and will be fleshed out as development progresses. Representing the development team today is Krish Pandya, Managing Member of Ompgh Consulting, who will be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Question. When you say 10% of the square footage of the housing will be affordable, I'm assuming you're talking about all the units and then sort of dividing that and determining how many units will be affordable, or?
Yes, can you guys hear me? Let me just put my camera on here.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, and the reason we said 10% right now, it gives us some flexibility to work with the community on which units to provide. Interestingly, the community came back and has requested larger houses or townhomes. So we just left the flexibility to decide what type of homes, whether these are 2-bedroom homes that we want to make affordable, 3-bedroom homes, maybe 1 or 2 of those. So that's the reason. So that it gives us a little bit of flexibility as we run through and have discussions with the community to see what type of affordable housing or units be designated as that. I do want to stress that there is no change. The quality of the housing, it's all going to be similar. So we're not making a distinction between affordable and market-based housing. And that's the reason for that percentage right now. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Could you talk a little bit through some of the workforce development ideas that you have? I know they're ongoing, but just avenues that you've explored.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So we've had, like you said, on our side, we've developed the classroom training modules, and we have partners lined up. We've also had, we brought on Macero as our prime contractor, and we took some time to make sure that there is a expectation with them that they will take the classroom training and convert that into some on-site training during construction. The other action we took was on the execution strategy. Initially, we were looking at modularizing, and that was the concept. And we found that there were 2 issues with that in terms of the mission that we wanted to accomplish in Hazelwood. One was obviously training, because if everything is going to be fabricated somewhere near Harrisburg, then we lose the opportunity to provide on-site training. So Macero, we worked with Macero and we changed the execution strategy to on-site stick-built construction. There are some challenges with that, especially in today's age with the workforce issues, inflation, etc. But we think that's the right thing to do. The other thing that allowed us to do is now be able to break up the contracts and make sure that we are able to meet the city's requirements when it comes to minority and women contracts. And we've presented a plan to the URA, and we are committed that we will try and get up to $4 million of contracts to minority and women-owned businesses. So it kind of goes hand in hand. The execution strategy will support the workforce development, and the execution strategy will also support the MWBE goals that we have.
Have you explored or had conversations yet about workforce development programs or resources that extend past construction?
Yes. So what we went into discussions with Partner for Work, and some of the recommendations was, why don't we see this as a pre-apprenticeship program for the official union-based and non-union-based programs that already exist and are in the Partner for Work's ecosystem. So the idea would be that when somebody goes through our classroom training, has the site experience, and we have the connectivity with Partner for Work, we are able to easily move them into official programs which are accredited, and then potentially also connect them with all the construction contractors and other connections and linkages that exist within the Partner for Work ecosystem. So that's as far as we've got, but we welcome other ideas and suggestions, and we're really looking for some certainty on the timeline of the project, which would really help us pin down some of these plans.
Thank you.
You mentioned that you had workforce partners lined up. Can you share a little bit more detail about that?
Yeah, those haven't changed. Yeah, absolutely. Those haven't changed since the last presentation that we had. There is a group called DOTS, that we are working with, and I can like that partnership hasn't changed. A couple of partners. I just want to make sure that I represent all the groups correctly there. But there's a group called DOTS, and there's which we've been working with, and they have set up the program. So I'm happy to send. We had a little presentation to Partner for Work. I'm happy to send that over to the board members and anybody else so that you have all the details.
So I thank you for your continued engagement on that front. I would suggest maybe we follow up with on this offline, or we can reconnect you with Partner for Work for future follow-up. But the sequencing that you described seemed a little bit out of order to me. It seems it seems out of order for somebody to go through some classroom training and then work on the site, and then end up in a pre-apprenticeship program that leads them to a family-sustaining career in the building trades. Like that should come first, frankly, and then they should end up getting the on-the-job train work on an experience on the site. Like once they're working on the site, they don't really need the pre-apprenticeship training anymore.
No, let me, absolutely. So let me clarify that, and maybe that's the source of confusion. So when they are on site, our goal is not to have them actually working on site, but to have the site presence. So the training that will be designed on site is to raise the site awareness, the safety, a demonstration of all the tools and techniques that they have seen in the classroom, an appreciation or an opportunity to talk to experienced supervisors and superintendents that are working. So you have to see that still as a learning module. It's not a working module. And hopefully that clarifies. So the idea is not to have the classroom training and have them start working on site, but to have a training on site which raises their site awareness when it comes to specific training modules, also tools awareness, health, safety, and other concerns. But the other opportunity here, of course, and as you know, is these days we are losing a lot of experience in the construction workforce. The soft knowledge that exists between superintendents and people that have 30 years of construction experience cannot be replicated in the classroom. So this is an opportunity for these people to be besides them. So I hope that explains. So we're not going to put them to work on actually working for the project, but it's a continuation of the development piece.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I just encourage you to, as you are, continue to work on that. And you seem like you're very committed to making sure that this piece of the project works. So appreciate that. But I think what we're going to be looking for, at least what I would be looking for, is some indication from those workforce development partners that they approve of whatever this process is, and that they are confident that this training process is actually going to lead to, to family sustaining careers for these folks in the long run, and not just, project-based employment.
Yeah, no, that's good feedback, and we'll make sure that remains as one of our focus areas.
I realize this is just an extension of exclusive negotiations, and I know, at least as it relates to workforce and some of the other issues that we've heard, from community and others we discussed 90 days ago. And it seems like there's been some progress made on those fronts. Mr. Pandey, I would encourage you, to what Director Williamson said on the workforce aspects of it, right? We had a lot of talk last time about the importance of the kind of community and public benefit, not coming sort of as an afterthought, but being ingrained and addressed, fundamentally in the way that the project comes together. So, it seems like you've done some work on that front. So thank you for that. I do want to go, if we can go to the other slide for the project, Daniel, sorry, on the environmental aspects, because there's sort of the environmental assessment as it relates to the ability or buildability for a site itself. And then I think there's the, localized environmental impact of what now is, effectively green space, passive greenway. in the neighborhood now, having development on it, hardscape, et cetera, and the implications and impacts of that. And it's more those aspects, at least in any interactions I've had within Hazelwood, be they at community meetings or others, that folks, raise if they're speaking about this project. So
Yeah.
I don't know that necessarily the required environmental studies that need to happen, to assess feasibility necessarily speak to those broader implications. So to that end, I'd be curious, some of the folks in public comment last time, and in comment that I know has been submitted to the board, have said they're supportive of, the investment. They'd like to see greater levels of affordability. So, thank you for continuing to look at that. But, I think for their part, there's plenty of, land in the neighborhood that could be used, for these purposes. And I'm just interested from your perspective, if you've, started or looked at the potential for any kind of auxiliary sites, et cetera, to help to balance, some of those kind of competing realities and constraints, if you will, around the project and what the community would like to see.
Sure. If I may, can I just go back a little bit? You talked about the progress that the project has made, but I want to make sure that the board understands that it's not just been progress on these things. As you know, the URA disposition process has a very extensive checklist of deliverables. So we've been focused on that as well. We were asked to do a phase 1 environmental ESA study, which was not originally part of the process that we thought we would have to do, but we did that. We also performed geotechnical testing. We did rough grading drawings and then updated the geotechnical report to make sure, as you talked about, the environmental, the feasibility of building something in that space is not in question. So we cleared all those hurdles. Also, I think should be some recognition that this is a privately funded project, and there's a tremendous work stream talking and trying to bring private capital into Hazelwood, which is considered a very risky neighborhood, and especially in today's environment with an impending recession and high interest rates and inflation. So that has also taken a lot of our time. And lastly, you talked about the sustainability aspect of the project. So we have been also spending a lot of time on that. We did a detailed tree survey. As you know, we had a pre-application meeting with the city to really understand the city standards for revegetation. We've committed to a couple of things of making sure that we meet any trees that have. And a lot of these trees are not native trees, and I think that there should be some recognition that these are in trees that have just grown there. I don't want to call them weeds, but they're not native trees. But we've committed.
SALINE.
Sorry, we've committed to revegetate for the city standards any tree that's 12 inches or over. There will be an equivalent number of trees that are revegetated in the property. Also, we'll work with the community to put trees in other parts of neighborhood that are required. So that process is carrying on. We're committed to that in terms of revegetation. There's also been a lot of work on our side to make sure there is understanding this is not a designated greenway. And we seem to have we keep referring to as a passive greenway, but there is a reality. If you go to that neighborhood, none of this is being maintained. No neighbors can even walk into this area. And by the way, the greenway is also not being maintained. So what we've said is we're happy as part of the development is to have an alignment with the community and the city that we will maintain certain aspects of the greenway and provide access into the greenway. So the net I'm trying to communicate is we have done a lot of work other than workforce development, and absolutely workforce development is key to this. But the project is also making sure that all the dimensions of bringing a sustainable project, sustainable housing are being met. And there's one other aspect I do want the board to know, that affordability has different or housing affordability has different drivers. Adding housing to the market allows you to keep costs, rental costs down. And there are no rental homes right now in Hazelwood. So one of the things we heard is that there's generations that are unable to stay in Hazelwood because there's nicer places in other parts of the city which they go to. And this is an opportunity to have nice housing in Hazelwood where their next generation of Hazelwood residents can actually want to stay. So I know I sidetracked a little bit, but I want to make sure that the board understands the complexity of this project, not just in terms of one dimension, but many dimensions. And in reality, we are facing some headwinds on this project, which are beyond anybody's control on this call, which is the economic feasibility of the project. Since we are not asking for any grants, we're not taking away any low income housing tax credits from anybody, but we're adding private capital to the ecosystem in Hazelwood. So we should, I would hope that the board would see that as a net positive.
You covered a lot of ground there. I don't know.
And I had to. I mean, it was an opportunity. I mean, there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and you know.
I don't think I wouldn't take any of the comments that we made as not sort of having an appreciation for, like you're saying, all of the different aspects of it that need to come together. I would take them more as an acknowledgement of that, and our desire to ensure that none of them sort of fall to the wayside as a result of the others. Development's complex, right? It's why our disposition process is as detailed as it is. It's why when projects come to this table, the board asks the questions that we do. It's why, our staff is incredibly, qualified and diligent and work long hours in assessing these projects and underwriting them. And we have, numerous committees who also vet them, and we ensure that there's community meetings and input so that we're hearing from folks that live in these communities, where the investments are happening, be they private, be they public subsidy, or any mix of anything in between. These are folks' communities. These are where they live. They wake up every day and they're going to experience these things. And I don't live in Hazelwood. I live up the hill in Greenfield, but the folks who live in Hazelwood are going to see it every day. So when they ask questions about it or have concerns whether or not something is a formally designated greenway or not, and if you've seen anyone walking there or haven't, I can't speak to that myself, but I do know what I hear when I am there for meetings or other colleagues, both at the authority and on this board and in the city. So I would not take sort of the comments and issues that we're in particular asking about to mean maybe what you were inferring them to, as much as these are ones that we want to ensure continue to develop as the project moves along.
No, I appreciate that very much. Thank you for that. And I know that this is just an opportunity for me to have a conversation. But no, I appreciate the support. I appreciate the work that the URA does. Donita's been fantastic, and we've got a lot of work to do on this project before it becomes a reality, and we are committed to do.
Director Williamson, you would come off mute. I'm sorry.
Yes, and I was going to say what you just did an excellent job of of explaining and capturing. We are presumably going to approve this extension. I think you should interpret our comments and our suggestions as being in the spirit in which they're intended, which is that we want to ensure that the project is successful, and that if in 90 days we're ready for the next actual vote on advancing the project, that there aren't remaining questions or issues that haven't been fully fleshed out.
Absolutely, and I'll take advantage of that time to work on some of the recommendations that have been provided. Absolutely, thank you for that.
That said, I guess I'll make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, the motion carries. Next on the agenda is the Pittsburgh Downtown Conversion Program. I believe Tom Link and Evan Miller are joining us for this one.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mr. Chair, members of the board, the public. Yeah, presenting these guidelines here. Just as a reminder, these are draft guidelines for the Pittsburgh Downtown Conversion Program were presented at the September 8th, 2022 board meeting. Since that time, the program guidelines have been on the URA's website, receiving public comment. Staff and has been receiving those comments and have worked to create some more affirmative language within the guidelines that were presented at the September 8th meeting, specifically around the acceptance of housing choice vouchers, adjustments to the per unit subsidy through the program. Just to remind us sort of the sort of high level, the mission of the program, it's really to reinvent and redevelop largely fallow and vacant downtown central business district buildings into new affordable housing developments. The guidelines themselves are intended to convert these buildings into affordable workforce housing, sort of high level features, certainly meeting minimum affordability thresholds, maintenance of those affordability restrictions for 40 years. Again, an emphasis on the acceptance of housing choice vouchers. And then, of course, compliance with all applicable programs and guidelines, including certainly the URA's compliance requirements, any funding requirements. As a reminder that this program is to be funded with using American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA dollars. So there's specific requirements as to those dollars. Just for the board, for the public, and for anybody who is watching this at any time, this approval is sort of I know we've been talking about this a bit, and of course it was presented at the September 8th board meeting, is a continued process, similar actually to what was presented with the Ompgh process. This step is required as we work with the city of Pittsburgh, as we finalize our recipient agreement with the city. That allows us really to frankly pull the monies necessary, at least from the city of Pittsburgh, to complement monies that we've raised through the state and additional URA monies to roll out this program. So there'll be a future announcement as we actually are able to accept applications and roll out the program publicly and start accepting applications for underwriting review. And of course, eventually bring those projects back to this board that would be underwritten by staff, approved through internal processes, and brought back to this board. So look for a future announcement as to the actual sort of execution and rollout of the program. It's not today. Hopefully within within a very soon future board meeting, but this is a step in that process. Real quick, I mean, Evan's here. Evan's done amazing work. I mean, certainly, Evan, please chime in. I really thank you, frankly, particularly for all of your support on this. And I know Daniel, who's here, has done amazing work, and Matt Sanders has burned some midnight oil to help us get to this point. There's been a bit of a complicated process, frankly, to ensure sort of tracking of a change in guidelines over the last several days here. So we appreciate all of that. But at any rate, that's the presentation. Certainly can pause and answer any questions from the board. And again, thank you for considering this program.
Thanks, Tom. Any questions, comments for the board? I know everyone's been involved in this in different ways.
I mean, I would just say I think staff have done a really great job of continuing to move this along. So Evan and Tom and your entire team, I just really appreciate the work you've done on this, the work that's gone into this, and I really look forward to seeing what happens with this as we get this pilot off the ground. This is something that I think is very sorely needed in downtown Pittsburgh. Like downtown Pittsburgh ought to be a place where everyone who works in downtown Pittsburgh can afford to live if they want to live in downtown. It's not that currently, but with the right sort of public intervention, it might become that. and I think this is a good step in the right direction. And if we get this pilot program right, then hopefully we can figure out a way to actually like identify and draw down the resources necessary in order to really get it to scale. As was mentioned in the PRA letter that we received that was referenced during public comment, this is a really small amount of money, frankly, in the grand scheme of things, compared to probably what is needed and what exists in other cities wrestling with some of the same challenges and some of the same issues. So also just want to thank the administration for continuing to push this forward.
Thank you. And also, I failed to say my name and title. For Tanika, it's for you. Thomas Link, I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at the URA. So I apologize for that. But thanks.
Too excited. You got too excited, Tom. You just wanted
I
to get
did.
right
I was,
into it.
I kind of go through this and forget to announce who I am and, what my title is. So apologies for that.
Good job, Tanika.
We practiced.
I know we did. My review's coming up, so we'll add that to my review. I apologize.
Councilman.
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Before we register, I just want to echo Sam's thanks to the staff that worked on this. I know you all went kind of above and beyond to make sure that we involved, a broad base of folks and did some outreach to pull these together. Want to thank Representative Innamorato and the entire state delegation, Senators Costa and Fontana in particular, for helping to secure the state funds that were matching the city funds that we're putting towards this. As Sam said, as the letter from the PRA and others have said, this is a drop in the bucket, but I hope very quickly we're able to show how effective this is and move things along in order to secure more resources from different funders and be able to make these investments really that are going to be critical, I think, for the future of downtown and its long-term resilience. So thank you all for all the work that you've done on this. And with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Lastly, we have the disclosures agenda. If there's any questions or comments from the board on any of the items here. If staff is able to speak to item 1K, the authorization on the small contractor line of credit, just some of the changes that we're looking to make in order to widen the applicant pool. I think that would be good for the public to be aware of as we look to increase contractors who are responsive, not just to our opportunities, but others. So, and apologies for springing that one on you.
Yeah, that's okay. Catherine, are you here? If not, I'll jump in.
I don't think that she's on the call.
Okay, yeah, no, appreciate that. Basically, we're trying to, frankly, we announced this program some time ago and we've had difficulty getting it to market. So we are trying to tweak some program guidelines to allow for, we think will get more folks involved. I think a key thing here that we're looking at is the spirit of this is to give small contractors capital so that they can go take advantage of contracting opportunities, right? That who otherwise are having difficulty raising capital. And one of the things the guidelines currently say is that you basically have to have already awarded the contract, and then we'll come back to you and give you, we'll look at a line of credit. So what we're doing is tweaking this to say, look, we'll basically provide a bit of a pre-approval that allow you to have in your pocket so you can go bid on work. And then if to the extent you are awarded a contract, then we'd bring it back to our process for a final approval. So that's one of the big things that we're looking for. The other thing I think to point out here is that, the original program is very specific that the business had to be in an Avenues of Hope. And one of the things we were kind of running into is that, with small contractors, that got a little bit difficult. It was, we to be that absolutely geographically constrained, found that we were really limiting our market to the point where we just weren't getting much uptake. So we're hopeful that, and it's certainly not outside the city, but, you know, to expand the geographic boundary by which we are supporting, you know, businesses that we would support. We think that will also help. And the other piece here is that, as with small contractors, you know, a key piece is sort of you know, to use a line of credit to execute work is to be able to have some capital up front, right? So if you have an award from us, you win a contract, you have to mobilize. It's kind of the spirit of this. So we're kind of we're changing the guidelines a bit to allow for more of a more flexible sort of a upfront disbursement of capital against those contracts. So those are the main conditions that we're asking for approval here to modify, and again with the intention of basically getting more folks to use our program. So that's the yeah, appreciate that, and I'm happy to answer those questions, and any other questions for that matter. Thank you.
Catherine looks like she's joined us as a presenter here on the call. So if Catherine, you have anything to add to that, please go ahead. But Tom, great work.
To be clear, Catherine, great thought leadership here. I'm happy to be able to talk about Catherine's
I was in like the
leadership,
wrong
but
Zoom
yeah, thank
section.
you.
No, I think you covered it very well. We're hopeful that by adding this pre-approval step, contractors can then avail of the program to then get a pre-approval letter from us and use it as they're competing for bids around the city. We're seeing that being a pretty critical piece right now. So we're changing how it works and really an effort to make it work better. Right now, we have done one line of contract since the program launched in 2021 with Tina Daniels at Concrete Rose. And we talked to her in depth and looked around the URA to see how we could make some program adjustments because we need this to reach more minority contractors in the city. Because we know there's a need there, and we just critically thought about this in order to make improvements. So then the program is just really better.
That's great.
Thanks,
that's why I was interested in hearing more about it, and I think, you know, it's important to kind of lift that up for the public, because there's a lot of folks that you know, I know express frustrations not with our program necessarily, but the complications that it really seems as though these changes are, you know, looking to address. So great work, Catherine and Tom, and, you know, the entire team on this. You know, thank you for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank Catherine mostly. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the disclosure agenda? We have motion?
Motion to approve this entirety.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. With that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you joining us this month, and we'll see you next month for our November board meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.